Joining me now is Florida's Attorney General Ashley Moody. AG, thanks very much for calling in. I know you're in Tampa right now. What can you tell us about what's going on there and in the rest of the state as well?
Yeah, good morning, Maria. It's going to be a tough morning for Floridians waking up in the dark without power. I know it's difficult right now for law enforcement who are out on high water vehicles and even vehicles we call SHRPs that can even get farther than high water vehicles to rescue people. They're now just trying in the dark to figure out what are the best way to, when they do rescue people, what are the routes to be able to get to hospitals. This storm was unique in that it was hard to predict the effects of this storm. So we had about, I think, 125 tornado warnings, even before, throughout the storm and even before it hit. We know that there were at least 27 tornadoes. As you said, we've confirmed loss of life. And that was on a county on the east, towards the east of Florida, not even where the hurricane initially made landfall in Siesta Key. So the interesting part of this is, yes, it came on board as a Cat 3, but a lot of the power and rain was on the northern side. So Pinellas and Hillsborough, where the storm surge, and of course we'll learn more as the light comes up and you can see more, but it was such a powerful wind and rain event. Some are calling it a 1 in 1,000 year event, as it affected with over 2 hours with rain. So they were making rescues on first floors of apartments and at the north side of the storm. So it's going to be a tough morning here in Florida, and we appreciate you thinking of us and paying attention.
Oh, we're praying for you and all of the constituents there. AG, let me get your take on how the White House's response to this has been. How would you characterize it?
We have been so focused on prepping the state and strategizing on how we're going to recover both life and property in the aftermath. I don't think Governor DeSantis or I or anybody in leadership here are paying much attention to that right now. I know there were this accusation or something that Governor DeSantis wouldn't take Harris's calls, but look, I don't think she's been involved in hurricane prep. I think he is so laser focused on getting the debris out from Helene, making sure everybody was safe. We were staged. I know she mentioned even monitoring price gouging, and that she was watching that, and I thought, that's so strange. I'm in charge of that here in Florida and have people on the ground. I don't know that we've spoken with her. So,
well, I mean, look, President Trump went to Georgia first when Helene first hit in Georgia, and there was a lot of talk about how Trump was on the ground first and the Democrats were slow to respond. But they're trying to change the conversation right now and saying that this is all misinformation around the government's response to these hurricanes. Watch this. Do we have the tape? They're saying that this is all misinformation, and yet we also know that Karine Jean-Pierre 2 years ago told us about how FEMA money was going to be available for illegal migrants. Watch this. Huh? AG Moody, we're waiting for these sound bites to play, and they're not playing. What would you say in terms of FEMA's response? Do you feel that FEMA has been on the ground and has had the wherewithal to give Florida, North Carolina, Georgia what they need?
Well, let me just say, after Helene hit, I was personally in these affected areas, and in areas where it hit and there were no homes left, just a concrete slab. There was an individual, a FEMA, at that Emergency Operations Center. I have met them here in Florida when we have had disasters, and I do know that Governor DeSantis is working with them closely. I will say, I heard yesterday the onslaught of accusations about misinformation, et cetera, coming out of a briefing from the White House about a hurricane approaching that was going to affect our state. And I thought to myself, this started with the Department of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, saying we are running out of money.
That's right.
So, in terms of misinformation, instead of coming out so strongly and aggressively against others, from the White House right before a storm, maybe they should just meet with him and say, what are you doing? Why are you spreading this information? And by the way, the people here in Florida, and Americans for that matter, they see when a blue state declares a disaster. When Massachusetts declared an emergency, a Biden-Harris emergency, because of the immigration issue, because they've opened up the border and they don't know how to pay and feed and shelter all these people that are now in our country, that's on them. That's not misinformation. And you know FEMA has to help with that. And so when Mayorkas comes out and says there's not enough money, of course people are going to assume that. So instead of starting this briefing warning as this destructive storm is approaching a state, why don't you start with, hey, I don't know, maybe explaining to the American people the misstatements from your own administration. That would be helpful if, in fact, they are misstatements.
Well, I think this is a really important point because no one would be talking about FEMA running out of money had it not been for Alejandro Mayorkas telling us that FEMA is not going to be able to get through the hurricane season because it's running out of money. And he told us that a week and a half ago. And since we found, Karine Jean-Pierre talking about how FEMA money is being used for illegal migrants. And she said it on tape in 2022. And so where the misinformation is, I have no idea, but they're clearly trying to change the conversation. Ashley Moody, it's good to talk with you. We send our best regards to all of the citizens affected by this hurricane. Thank you. AG Ashley Moody.